Director and friends. Today I am going to share with you our experience of laparoscopic cholecystectomy in our hospital. Particularly, I will present a case where I will discuss with you some of the complications which we have encountered. As you know, gallstone disease is a very common disease, prevalent all over the world, and about nearing 1 million lap choles or cholecystectomies are being done in USA per year. 1 million. You can imagine how the statistics is. And in India, we don't have a concrete figure. And in our hospital, we used to have at least 2 or 3 cases per day. We do either mostly lap chole and sometimes open cholecystectomy. Coming to the history, this gallstone disease is very prevalent, and we do not know what is the cause of the gallstone disease, but there may be some equilibrium disturbance among the cholesterol equilibrium, which gives rise to formation of the nidus forming gallstone. There may be factor of infection or stasis causing gallstone disease, and it may be symptomatic or asymptomatic, but after the advent of ultrasonogram, a lot of non-symptomatic or asymptomatic cases we encounter. But according to the situation, either patient's demand or anticipating complications of gallstone disease, we have to do cholecystectomy. The first cholecystectomy was done by Karl Langenberg in 1882, and after 105 years, Philippe Mouret of France, he did first laparoscopic cholecystectomy. So during 105 years, there are so many cholecystectomies with so many complications, and after advent of this laparoscopic surgery, since last 23 years only, there are so many physiological advantages, disadvantages, and we understood the physiology of pneumoperitoneum and laparoscopy, and there are a lot of modifications in instrumentation, and now today laparoscopic cholecystectomy or lap chole, popularly known as, is the standard of care for gallstone disease. So now I am presenting a case which we have done here and faced some complications. This is a 35-year female, non-Lule case. I have mentioned non-Lule, why I will tell you later. And she was from Santaragachi. She was admitted in this hospital in November 2008 with complaints of plain right hypochondrium for 1 month. There was no history of fever, jaundice, hematopoiesis or melena, and she had acute attack of right abdominal pain 4 weeks back, 4 weeks before operation. She was not a known case of diabetes or hypertension. There was no significant past history excepting she has undergone BTL about 10 years back. On examination, general survey, she was thin, there was no tail, no uterus, infantile edema, all blood pressure were within normal limits. Abdomen was soft and tender, no distension, no venous engorgement, umbilicus was normal. There was healthy BTL scar at the umbilical area. There was no visible lump. But gallbladder was palpable, which was smooth, non-tender. Liver, spleen were not palpable, and no other mass in the abdomen. There was no fluid in the peritoneal cavity, and the bowel sounds are normal. Chest was clear, and the other systems revealed no abnormality. Routine investigations, hemograms were within normal limit. Blood sugar, blood biochemistry, including sugar, urea, creatinine, sodium, potassium were normal. Liver function tests were within normal limits, and her blood group was AB positive. Coming to radiological investigations, chest X-ray was normal. Ultrasound of abdomen shows hugely distended thick walled gallbladder with multiple stones, largest one being 17 mm, impacted at the neck of the gallbladder. CBD was 5.6 mm, it was free. Liver, spleen, pancreas, kidney, uterus and ovaries are normal. There is no fluid in the peritoneal cavity. This is the ultrasonogram of a mucous distended gallbladder with stone having post-acoustic shadow. So diagnosis as mucosal of a gallbladder, cardiac examinations were normal, which we do before undergoing any major surgery. And she was planned for laparoscopic cholecystectomy under general anesthesia on 12th November 2008. This is the conventional 4-port positions. This is the umbilical port through which this telescope, we introduce telescope in the axles for visualization of the peritoneal cavity. This is epigastric port, which is the right hand working port, and sometimes mostly we use left hypochondrial port. There are two methods, you can go for epigastric or left hypochondrial according to your surgeon's choice. And then on right side, one is right hypochondrial port, by which that is the left hypochondrial left hand working port, and another is the right axillary line or lumbar line to the transumbilical plane, which is used to stabilize the gallbladder by holding the fundus of the gallbladder. This is the conventional course. So pneumoperitoneum was done in this case through blind Weiss needle technique. There is difficulty in putting the Weiss needle. On third attempt, I could succeed doing pneumoperitoneum. Other ports are on this. So what pathology we saw after doing pneumoperitoneum and after introduction of the telescope? Gallbladder was hugely distended, it was thick walled. A big stone was impacted at the neck of the gallbladder. Neck of the gallbladder is adherent to CBD and common hepatic duct. Liver, stomach, duodenum, colon, small intestine, pelvic organs were normal. This is a picture of this is not that picture, I have stolen from other. This is you can see this is like a mucosal of the gallbladder. So what procedure I undertook? Because it was distended, so holding the fundus of the gallbladder was difficult. So I aspirated gallbladder, about 60 ml of thick mucinous fluid was aspirated. We routinely sent for culture. The stone could not be disinfected from the neck of the gallbladder or the Hartmann's pouch, and I started dissecting the Talus triangle to isolate cystic duct and cystic artery. But while dissecting, because of dense adhesion, I saw bile leak from the cystic duct CBD junction area. So there are possibilities, or I was certain that there was some CBD injury. So I converted the case to open cholecystectomy. So I opened the abdomen with upper midline incision and pathology was reviewed. As I know, I was telling there was some difficulty in putting the fast Weiss needle. So I found the hematoma to lesser curvature of the, just above the lesser curvature of the stomach. There was a hematoma in the gastrohepatic momentum, but there was no other significant injury. So I left it as such. And coming to gallbladder and Talus area, there is dense adhesion between Hartmann's pouch and CBD, and small lateral injury above the junction of the cystic duct and common hepatic duct was noted. So as the stone was not able to be disimpacted, I gave incision over the stone and stone was extracted. Then cystic duct and artery was tied together because it was so densely adherent that it was not able to separate cystic duct and the artery separately. So it was tied together and gallbladder was removed and hemostasis speed was given to the resected margin as we could not ligate the cystic artery separately. And gallbladder was dissected from the liver and hemostasis achieved. And injury to the lateral wall of CBD was localized and repaired with 40 Vicryl. There is no other problem. So abdomen was closed with a 24 French thoracic drain at Morrison's pouch. And as I told, there is nothing was required for the hematoma which was seen at the lesser momentum side. So post-op period, vitals were stable, patient was afebrile, but bile continued about 100 to 120 ml per day till 5th day, 5th post-operative day. So ERCP and stenting of the CBD was done on day 6, and gradually the amount of bile drain reduced. And on the second post ERCP test, she had severe pain in the epigastrium, radiating the back. And but patient was with continued with IV drip and antibiotics. And on fourth post ERCP day, she developed reduced urination and developed puffiness of face. And when I investigated, blood urea was 103 and creatinine was 10.6. And on that day, she was almost completely anemic. Amylase was also high on the first, second post ERCP day. So hemodialysis support was given. After 3 sittings of hemodialysis, patient improved and gradually urine output improved, and renal function test also gradually reverted back to normal. And after that, bile leak also stopped, and stitches was removed on 14th post of day and discharged, with advice for the extraction of the removal of the CVD stent between 4 to 6 weeks. It is removed on 26/12 after 5 weeks. CVD stent was removed and follow-up was normal. So coming to discussion of this case, conversion is not a failure, but the timely conversion can save the life of the patient. And retrospectively, I thought probably when there was a dense adhesion, it was difficult to distinguish CVD, cystic duct, and cystic artery alert area. Probably the incision, before going to dissection, probably incision could have been given over the stone area and removed the stone so that CVD injury could be prevented. The cost of bile leak was about 120 ml for 5 days, and CVD stenting helps in this stage to prevent prolonged bile leak and hastens healing of the CVD injury, because it is small injury and it is timely detected and repaired. And acute pancreatitis is a known complication of ERCP, and acute pancreatitis sometimes very less percent of cases can lead to acute renal failure. So in this case, we had so many problems. It is a simple lap coli, but because of anatomical problem and dense adhesion, we faced CVD injury, and after that we repaired that. We converted, repaired the case, repaired the CVD injury. Then CVD stenting was done to hasten the healing process, and she had pancreatitis, and following pancreatitis, she had acute renal failure. So many complications we encountered in this case. So for this only I presented this case, because of so many complications of a simple procedure we could face. So coming to general complications of laparoscopic surgery, overall complications are about 0.5 to 5%, and it may be due to general anesthesia, which we for any operation in general anesthesia is given, and we have some complications. And particularly in laparoscopic cases, there is respiratory changes, there may be pneumothorax, there may be cardiological complications, gas embolism, esophageal infection. Coming to respiratory changes, because we do this pneumoperitoneum with carbon dioxide insufflation, it caused increased airway pressure, increased central venous pressure, and increased arterial carbon dioxide concentration. And rate of diffusion of carbon dioxide depends on pressure of the pneumoperitoneum, functional respiratory capacity, and forced respiratory volume techniques. And as we are forcing this carbon dioxide into the peritoneal cavity, and it raises the diaphragm, so movement of diaphragm is hampered. That also causes a lot of pulmonary changes. Pneumothorax is one of the complications of laparoscopic surgery. Inadvertent there is needle into pleural cavity, sometimes may lead to pneumothorax. And while doing lap coli, we push pressure of fundus is retracted upwards towards the diaphragm, and if the force is very much, sometimes there is document in the literature, it may injure the diaphragm. It slips from the gallbladder and the instrument can puncture the diaphragm. And also there is a record that it may injure the pericardium and rupture of the perforation of the heart also, it is there in the literature. So we should be very careful in handling the instruments. Coming to cardiovascular complications, the cause is when we are doing pneumoperitoneum and particularly sometimes between reverse tenor position, and the patient is almost standing high, head high, and leg almost touching the floor. There occurs venous stasis in the lower extremities, and effects of absorbed carbon dioxide to the vascular compartment. So effects are, there may be hypotension, there may be hypertension, there may be arrhythmias and cardiac arrest very rarely. Hypotension may be due to reduced venous return, and as I told, because of posture and increased intra-abdominal pressure also. And how to manage? This is managed by giving IV fluids, and graduated compression stockings could be applied over the legs so that the stasis will be less, and intermittent pneumatic compression devices also can be used for that. And if you encounter hypertension, you can reduce the antitelegraph position little bit. And hypertension sometimes we encounter, it may be due to sympathetic response, and usually settles down after evacuation of carbon dioxide after the procedure is over. And antihypertensive drugs may be used during the procedure. Arrhythmias can occur, and usual incidence is usually 0.04%, and usually occurs during the initial phase of carbon dioxide insufficiency. And very rarely cardiac arrest also can occur, which may be due to hypercapnia, anosmia, and increased intra-abdominal pressure due to endodermal position, pneumoperitoneum, and reduced cardiac output. This will be antitelegraph position. Sometimes we encounter subcutaneous emphysema while putting this carbon dioxide. So improper placement of varicetal and trocar. Whenever we are doing trocar introduction to the pituitary cavity, you should be sure that it is inside the pituitary cavity. So for that we undertake some tests whether it is inside pituitary cavity or not. You should be sure that it is inside the pituitary cavity. Otherwise, if it is in the parietal wall before the parietal peritoneum and insufflate, there is chances of development surgical emphysema. And it can be prevented, as I told you, it can be prevented by looking into the trocar before connecting to the gas line. And usually the emphysema is resolved by spontaneous absorption of carbon dioxide. Hypothermia. This is another complication of laparoscopic surgery because of prolonged insufficiency of poor carbon dioxide gas into the pituitary cavity, and as you know, environment is also poor. And while doing laparoscopic surgery, we do a lot of irrigation, so the irrigating fluid, cold irrigating fluid also can add to the hypothermia. So to prevent it, intraoperative warming agents may be used, and body warmers are available which may be used in prolonged cases. Gas hemorrhaging is one of the complications of laparoscopic surgery, and it occurs when there is vascular access, there is some vascular injury, and carbon dioxide may pass to the vascular space and cause hemorrhaging. And if you suspect gas hemorrhaging, release the pneumoperitoneum and turn the patient to left with head lower down than the right ventricle, and gas can be aspirated to the central line, and oxygen, 100% oxygen ventilation should be done at that time. Post-operative pain may be the cause of laparoscopic surgery, where there are 13% patients complain of significant pain in the abdomen, and it is maybe because of intra-abdominal or interperitoneal collection of bile or blood. So after procedure, you should aspirate all the collection blood or bile that are present meticulously, and analgesia may be given. And for local pain, long-acting xylotone can be given to the port site to prevent post-op pain. Complications specific to laparoscopy is needle and trocar injury, bleeding, instrumental injury, watery injury, infection, tumor seedling, port site hernia, non-healing port-side sinus, and DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Coming to cautery injury, we should be we are using a lot of instruments, so we should ensure that the sheath should be properly, the instrument should be properly insulated. And another is called capacitor coupling passes of current through even the insulation is that sometimes when you use plastic cannula, there may be some transmission disturbance of current and it may cause cautery injury. And as you know, you use the monopolar diathermy, so transmission of electrical energy to the adjacent organs are also there. So you should be very careful while using cautery near the vital organs like particular CPD or lymphatic etc. Deep vein thrombosis. The persons who are more prone to develop deep vein thrombosis are elderly, obese, cardiac patients with prolonged surgery, and because we are using tender portion, articular portion, because of diastasis, they are more prone to develop deep vein thrombosis. So the measures to be taken: graduated compression stockings or pneumatic compression devices, and heparin prophylaxis can be given in various stages. These factors are there. Lily and trocar injury. Very deadly injury, they are usually small in diameter and often unrecognized, and they heal spontaneously and require no treatment. But trocar injury are more significant, and while putting the trocar, we should have the surgeon should put the trocar very carefully so that it do not injure the vital organs in the body. So if you force it very rapidly, then it may injure the blood vessels, it may injure the GI tract, gut, or sometimes bladder or spleen. So before particularly splenic injury should be avoided when we are giving blind trocar insertion to the left hypochondrium. We should percuss the abdomen to exclude splenic enlargement because it is a blind hole. So the possible injuries you may cause